You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes. Here's your host, Jake.
Hi, it's Jake here. Welcome to The Voluntary Life. This is another episode about financial independence and early retirement, and I'm very pleased to have a special guest. It is the host of the blog Root of Good. It's Justin. Hi, Justin.
Hey, Jake. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Great.
It's good to connect with you. Where are you based at the moment?
I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, here in the United States. I've been here almost my whole life.
Awesome. And I've seen your blog, Root of Good, and very, very cool to see another person sharing their own experience and their own story about financial independence. But for people who haven't seen your blog yet, could you just give a brief background to your blog and how you came to be financially independent?
Sure, yeah. So it's Root of Good, rootofgood.com. And I sort of just started it on a whim. Right after I retired, I said, "Hey, I've got this knowledge of how to pull off an early retirement at age 33. I know how to save money. I know how to invest efficiently and reduce expenses to the point where the math works out to get your withdrawal rate down to 3 or 4% of your investment portfolio." So I started the blog. In terms of how I got there, how I got to financial independence, pretty much just saving more than half of my income for about 10 years. And my career went back and forth a little bit, but civil engineering was the general career path. My wife as well, she works for an investment bank, not one of the New York Wall Street high-paid people, but she works in the back office here in Raleigh for supporting people on Wall Street.
Right.
So that's in a nutshell, saving half our income or more over about 10 years. So
and for people who are listening to this, so you did not receive any kind of major financial assistance in the form of an inheritance or some kind of big amount of money from others. This has been your own savings has been the basis of this. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, there was my parents helped with college a little bit, and other than that, I've been pretty much on my own since age 19 or so.
I think that's awesome and really inspiring to hear about for people. So how did you get into this frugality and this sort of level of saving? Because it's not typical. And, I saw on your blog that you kind of describe that you and your wife basically just kept a similar lifestyle as your incomes rose rather than, buying more and more stuff. And putting that money into savings, and that isn't typical. So what got you into this?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I think maybe some people are just programmed to want to constantly increase their standard of living, or at least what they're spending to live. For us, I mean, we were happy when we were in college, and when we got out, we bought a bigger house than we had in college. We probably go out to eat maybe about the same, maybe less. But we buy better groceries than we did when we were in college. We're able to afford better trips than we did in college. But the lifestyle expansion kind of stopped once we got those full-time jobs, and we had, we knew we were saving a lot back then when we first started working out of college, and haven't really increased the spending, like you're saying, like a lot of people will do. And I don't know, maybe it's not intentional necessarily, but it's just, if you're happy with what you have, if you can spend twice as much money and maybe bring about a very tiny increase in how happy you are. But, we have 2 cars. Having 3 cars probably wouldn't really make any difference. Having a house twice the size of our current house probably wouldn't make much of a difference. We don't even use the whole house we have already. So I think it's just focusing on what we have and enjoying what we have, and not worrying about what else we could have, because there's always going to be, I'm never going to have what Bill Gates has. I'm never going to have what billionaires have. So it's kind of just creating a realistic mindset of what's possible and being content with what you have right now.
Right. And it sounds like, were you sort of specifically going for early retirement, or were you just generally being frugal and and kind of now benefiting from those choices? I mean, is that something that was a real goal for you too when you started out?
I started on the path to accumulating wealth. I mean, even back in probably middle school and high school. I mean, I've always been a little bit entrepreneurial and focused on making money and keeping the money and letting the money work for me, and setting myself up to keep expenses low. As far back, I know in high school and probably middle school, although it gets kind of fuzzy back then. But really, I think the concept of early retirement was really crystallized when I started reading online more about it. Not long after I started working full time, probably about a year after I started working full time and having all this money and not knowing what to do with it and how to invest it. So I started focusing more on learning about how to invest money in a smart way, in a low cost way. And then I started realizing, I put together a spreadsheet, and I said, wait a second, if I'm saving all this money, it's just a matter of time before I have enough money to live off of the investments. I think I came up with, it would take me 20 years. When I started working, I said it'll take me 20 years to get to early retirement. But at that point, it was so far off. It's 2 decades away. When you're 24, 25, thinking about being 45 is like forever in the future. Right. So, but as we got closer and our incomes went up and our spending stayed relatively flat, that spreadsheet was updated, and all of a sudden, putting in twice as much money knocks off a few more years from the retirement date. And then we kept investing through the Great Recession in 2008 and into 2009. And we just kept piling in the money, not worrying about the retirement date particularly, but just knowing everything's on sale. Why not keep buying stuff? And then over the last 4 or 5 years, with the great market returns, the portfolio took off and got us to where we needed to be. Right.
And I definitely want to ask you about your investment strategy, but just coming back to your the saving stage and how you did it. So it took you roughly 10 years, and you were saying that you were saving more than 50% of your combined incomes. Is that right? Is it approximately what kind of percentage were you saving, and how did that change as your income grew?
I'm just guesstimating here, but probably when we started out working, it was probably around 50%, maybe even been a little bit less the first couple of years. But as the incomes went up, we pretty much just saved all the raises. And I think our incomes probably went up about 75% in nominal terms, ignoring inflation. They went up about 75% from when we started working until when I retired. So we just pretty much saved all the extra, and it was probably saving 60 or 70%, depending on how you calculate 401k matches and that those sort of extra benefits. I mean, that it's a round number. 70% maybe is a good number to say when we quit working.
Right.
That's about what it was.
Right. And so how did you do that in terms of your lifestyle? And I mean, obviously you sort of mentioned that part of the key for you was not having lifestyle inflation, but just in terms of choices about housing and transport and food, what do you think the key wins for you were as a family in terms of your savings?
Yeah, I think part of it is we just got back from a trip to Canada, and just seeing how costs are different in different parts of the world, but incomes, salaries are probably relatively similar. I think we ended up just probably pure luck, ended up growing up in a low cost of living area here in Raleigh. And then we chose a neighborhood that wasn't private, country club exclusive, gated community. It's a relatively modest neighborhood of a mix of blue collar and white collar people, but it's a little bit older. We bought a house that was a kind of a fixer upper. Bought it from the city. So we put some, we had some sweat equity there and have, so part of it was just smart housing choices, not spending, not buying everything that we could buy based on what the bank would tell us we would qualify for a mortgage for.
Right.
We probably could have bought twice the house starting out. And then we could have upgraded through the years and probably ended up with a house 3 or 4 times what we have right now based on our incomes and building up equity. But we have a decent house. I mean, it's a 4-bedroom house. There's a small lake in the back, and it's a mile or two away from everything. It's in the city. It's near a bus line, which is rare in a lot of cities in the Southeast United States. Public transit's pretty rare. But I actually took the bus to work some, and for a while I had a free bus pass, so that saved us some cash. We kept the same. We still have the 2 same cars that we bought back in college 14 years ago.
Right.
They're Hondas. They're well maintained. At least the engines and the moving components. The outside's looking a little bit banged up right now, but we drove one of the Hondas to Canada and back 2,300 miles, and mechanically it worked fine except for a flat tire. But I don't know. We just never really upgraded any parts of our lifestyle.
Right. And what about eating out? Is that something? What's your sort of approach been to that?
Yeah, we probably have decreased eating out over the years, and I think part of it is just we both of us have learned to cook pretty well, and my wife's actually from Thailand, and so she likes to cook some of the Asian foods, and I've picked up Mexican and some Thai cooking and Italian foods, and so we eat pretty well at home by shopping at the grocery store and preparing our own foods. But we still go. Kids. And yeah, she's over here. She suggested kids. That's another factor. I think it's just easier to eat at home when we have 3 kids, and so it's easier to prepare a meal at home and then to sit down and eat instead of trying to pack up 3 kids, and the youngest one's in diapers still. Pack up the 3 kids with the diaper bag and get them to a restaurant and get them to be quiet and act civilized, and then order your food and wait for it, and then it comes out and then you get to eat. You have to wait for the check, and then you pay it, and then you have to get all the kids back in the car and then come back home.
Right.
And so it's kind of an ordeal. I mean, if it was just the 2 of us, it would be different. And we'll go out to eat sometimes, just the 2 of us, but I think we spend. It's less than $100 a month on dining out, and part of that's also we are in an inexpensive area where it's just not. You can go out to eat for the whole family for $30 around here. So, but yeah, a lot of it's switching from dining out to cooking food at home.
Right. And one of the things that I saw on your blog, and you just mentioned in terms of having kids and stuff. This is a very interesting aspect to ask you about the sort of the family lifestyle and the pursuit of early retirement, because you wrote on your blog that you thought it was really important that you and your wife both had similar attitudes towards saving and towards your financial goals. And so is that something that you think is kind of one of the things that enabled you to do this?
I think so. Yeah, I've seen just from talking to other people and looking online at early retirement and financial independence sites. One of the biggest impediments to being successful at saving lots of money and growing wealth and reaching financial independence is a spouse who's not on board. It's if you're working on building wealth and the other half of your household is working on spending that wealth, they can probably spend it faster than you can grow it. And if you're not on board with that common goal of whether it's retiring at 40 or even just having a year's worth of cash in the bank in case something happens to one of you or you lose a job or something. If there's not that mindset or that goal in place, it's sort of like you're working in two different directions and canceling out one person's canceling out the other person's hard work.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a huge amount of sense, and also because it is a question of deferral of gratification. These sort of saving techniques that you're talking about, and I think if both partners can get some sense of purpose and meaning for why you're doing it and where you're going, then you can both get a sense of fulfillment from doing the saving. Whereas if one partner is just I have to, not do all the nice things that I'd like to do because my partner wants to save money, then that's potentially a source of real conflict too. So I think it's really important for people who are considering this to be on the same page. Just as it's really important in life generally to be on the same page about sort of really big questions like money in relationships. But it sounds like it worked out really well for you.
Yeah, we've had discussions about, wouldn't it be nice if... I think maybe a new car is one of them. My wife she used to say she wanted a new car all the time, and she has the oldest car in the parking lot. But the car is well maintained, so it runs. And I try to, I like to work on things and fix things. So, that's one of those things. It's not a point of contention exactly, but sometimes, and at the end of the day, we may end up getting a new car in a few years. I don't know if we'll get a used car or a new car, but we can afford it. And if the last one lasted 14 years, the next one might last even longer.
Right. So I just wanted to ask a couple more questions about the process of saving. So you mentioned that you took out a mortgage and you bought your house. A lot of people who pursue this tend to rent. And I wondered what you thought about. It sounds like a key there for you was that you also got this relatively cheap. That the house came relatively cheap. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about how you viewed paying down the mortgage. Was that something that you prioritized over other savings, or what was your sort of approach to that?
Well, we actually bought the house with cash to start out with, and the majority of the purchase was our own cash, and then my parents had some extra cash that they couldn't invest. They didn't want to invest anywhere, so I borrowed some money from them for a little bit less than half the purchase price. And then after about a year, I just went ahead and got a mortgage and locked in a lower rate. And I think I actually cashed out some money at that point and invested it in the market. Right. That was probably 04, 05. And I haven't done the math to see if cashing it out made sense, but I think it probably did because of the good market returns lately. But so anyway, we paid down the mortgage. We've gone from, I think we started with a 15-year mortgage. That first year after we bought the house, we started with a 15-year mortgage and then refinanced to a 10-year mortgage. The interest rates here in the U.S. have dropped. I guess in the last 10 years or so, they've dropped each year or stayed about the same. So it made sense to refinance pretty often. So I think we've refinanced 4 or 5 times, and each time we would get the same mortgage term or decrease it. So we would end up increasing our mortgage payment, but that would force us to pay it off quicker. And I think the last 2 times we refinanced into a 5-year note, and we actually still have a mortgage right now. I think there's about $40,000 left on it, and roughly 2 or 3, I think 2.5 years left on it. But it's at 2% interest rate, or a little bit under 2% interest. So we're not in a huge hurry to pay it off, and we have enough cash on hand just to pay it off if we wanted to just pay it off tomorrow. So it's really just a financial tool right now of borrowing money cheap and then leaving it in the market and letting it ride. Kind of taking a gamble, but it's a relatively small part of our net worth. But I think long term we plan on being mortgage free. In unless the market gets really, really cheap and interest rates stay low, there's some chance we might refinance out some cash and invest it. But it'll be nice not to have a mortgage payment at all, just because it's cash flow that you don't have to come up with from your investments. And we're 2.5 years away from that point right now. But I think it's a good strategy to pay down the mortgage around when you retire. Right,
yeah. And during this period, as you say, you have a family, you have 3 kids, and that's a very, very sort of significant part of everyone who has kids. That's a very significant part of their financial life. And I read on your blog, you sort of pointing out that you think that people tend to spend a huge amount on having kids, whereas your focus has been more on prioritizing the time that you get to spend with them. So I wonder what your thoughts are about the financial considerations for having kids and how it's worked out for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I've seen these forecasts that say it cost $250,000 or $300,000 to raise a kid to age 18, and that doesn't even include college costs, which are very high here. But I'm not sure what people are spending money on. Maybe if you include housing costs, where we could potentially live in a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment, and instead we have 3 kids, so we have to buy a bigger house. But really, if we couldn't find a cheaper house here if we tried, that has a yard. So, I mean, the housing costs are kind of a wash. I'm sure we spend more money on food and electricity, but those are relatively inexpensive items. We don't really spend a whole lot on entertainment or toys. So much of that is free or cheap anyway, with the park systems and public swimming pools, used toys, hand-me-downs. Yeah, and clothes. I mean, we very rarely spend money on clothes for the kids, and if we do, it's not a whole lot. There's thrift stores here where you can buy new or used clothes that are 50 cents per item. I mean, almost free. And sometimes they have the tags still on them. It's brand new stuff. People just have so much stuff and they get rid of them. And a lot of times it's barely worn or maybe never worn at all. And sometimes brand new. So
right.
Overall, I guess it's, some people equate, if you don't care about your kids if you don't spend a lot of money on them. But as long as you're providing for them and providing the things they need and letting them grow and, making sure they're in school and getting a good education and well fed and you have a safe way to transport them, whether it's a car or public transit or bikes or whatever. I'm not sure where all the money goes. I mean, I've seen the forecasts and the estimates of what you're supposed to spend, but and healthcare is one. I mean, we lucked out of having 3 healthy children that go to the doctor maybe once a year for the routine checkup. And our health insurance happens to be almost free. Some people are paying. I know through my job it would have been $8,000 or $9,000 a year to cover the kids, just because of the health insurance situation. So that's one area where it just depends on where you work and how much your health insurance happens to be. But so and I say lucky. I mean, we also, when you look at a job, you look at the total benefits package, and if one job has insurance where the kids are free and another job has insurance where the kids are $9,000, there's an easy way to pick up $9,000 if you pick the other job.
Right, so. Right. Yeah, and I think what's really awesome is that you have got to a position where you're able to spend a lot of quality time with your kids, which is, I mean, that's really worth. I mean, that's invaluable. So I think the flip side of financial independence is, maybe in order to pursue it, one isn't buying as many consumer toys and stuff like that. But the really fundamental thing for me, and we don't have kids yet, but the fundamental thing for me will be the opportunity to spend time with our kids when we do have kids. And it sounds like, you get a lot of time with your kids now, which is really awesome.
It's good because, and part of it too is you're not, when you're working all the time, you're so wrapped up in work and you're thinking about work, and even when you're not working, you're thinking about work, and you have 2 days on the weekend, and that's pretty much it. You get a few weeks off a year, but on the weekend you're busy doing errands and shopping and fixing things, and you have fixed things that you have to do, and so there's just very little free time out there. But yeah, once you're not required to go to work 40 hours a week, you can relax more and you can spend more time. You go out on walks, go out, set up play dates with other people, take them to the park, take them swimming. There's a lot more things that, you can do it while you're working, but your time is so limited. So now I have time to spend time with the kids and my own personal interests.
Yeah. Cool. Now, as far as I understand, though, your wife is still working. Is that right?
Yeah. She's still working. We had both planned to work for another year or two longer, but my job ended pretty suddenly, and we pretty much had enough at that point. And since then, the market has been very nice to us, and we're above the point where we need to be. But she's still working for now. I hope her employer doesn't listen to this podcast. But she's sort of worked out a pretty good setup where her company has a formal sabbatical policy where you get 3 months off that's paid every 5 years. And so she tried to take that this summer, but they didn't give her the full 3 weeks off. Sorry, 3 months off. They gave her 5 weeks off, fully paid. So she's on that right now. So she's kind of testing out the early retirement waters right now.
Right.
For a few more weeks. And then next summer, they promised at least 2 months paid time off. And her company's pretty good with, they give off another month in vacation time and lots of holidays. So, and really, really, really good benefits, and she can work from home occasionally. So it's kind of a good, not laid back job, but it's very flexible. And she may be there for another year, or if the employer is listening, maybe forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of as long as she wants to, but there may be a day where she just says, "That's it, I'm done." And probably, a couple of years, I don't.
Yeah, well, what I get from what you're saying is that it's not a question of having to continue on indefinitely. It's a question of looking at what the benefits are and deciding, when does it potentially make sense. And for the moment, she gets lots of benefits. So
right.
You guys are basically assessing your options as you go and seeing, what would be the best for everyone overall. Yeah,
and it's one of those, I guess, just the overriding mindset throughout life is, if you're presented with a really sweet situation and a really good exchange, take advantage of it while you have it, because it can be hard to find opportunities later. And so, this equates to, then if she works another year or two, that's 2 to 5, maybe 6 years of additional living expenses that we'll have, which can translate to a slightly higher lifestyle or a better chance of having plenty of money forever, or more vacation time, better vacations, longer trips. It's so having more money is definitely nicer, but at some point the benefits of having more money is pretty small. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, couple more practical questions I wanted to ask you. Tax is another important consideration. And as far as I sort of understand from your blog, you guys have been quite sort of consistent in maxing out your tax-deferred accounts and so forth while you were working. Is that right? Was that a sort of part of your strategy?
Yeah, that was a big part of the strategy. Our federal income tax bills have been close to zero for most of our working career. We may have paid 1% or 2% total of our income in a couple of years, but recently it's been, I think last year it was 0.1% or 0.2%. There's an article on the blog where I talk about paying $150 tax on $150,000 income. And that was actually written before I filed taxes. We ended up paying about $240 tax on $150,000 income. So I was off by $90 or so, but rounding error, right? But part of it is just taking advantage of the tax credits and the tax deductions that are out there. Kids are a significant factor. I think they saved us about $5,500 in taxes. Participating in employer benefits programs, maxing out our contributions to tax deferred savings programs, all that stuff added up results in saving tens of thousands of dollars a year in taxes. And so add that up over a working career, whether it's 10 years for us or 30 years for somebody else, you could be saving many hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, or at least deferring those taxes. I mean, so 3/4 of our money is tied up in tax deferred savings, and so eventually we'll pay some tax to get it out. But we have the flexibility of deciding what we withdraw and when and how much tax we want to pay. So there is a lot of flexibility there with paying taxes, and our strategy all along was, hey, let's keep the money in our own pockets and then pay the tax man later if we have to, or if we end up being filthy rich. So what? If we have to pay $100,000 a year in taxes, so what? We can spend the other $300,000 or $400,000 that we have.
Right.
That would be a great problem to have, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I was interested to read that you were never that much into kind of detailed budgeting, because a lot of people who pursue this are very careful about kind of being as very conscious of budgeting out their spending very exactly and so forth. And what I understand is you had a more kind of just generally save the max and be frugal approach, but you weren't, until recently, you weren't that into budgeting. Is that right? Can you share your thoughts about the whole budgeting question?
Yeah, even now, we're really not, we don't really budget at all. I mean, I have a target of roughly $32,000 a year for a retirement budget, but that's mostly just for planning purposes of how am I going to withdraw $32,000 per year? How am I going to fund our lifestyle? But in reality, I think we're a few $1,000s under budget this year so far. Next year, maybe a few thousand over budget. And we don't have fixed categories of, we can spend. I know some people use like a cash envelope system, and if they can only spend $110 on dining out, and then there is not that 111th dollar is not there. They have to stop eating out. If it's the 20th of the month, they cannot dine out another meal. And for us, it's more like, well, we could dine out and it'd be $30 or $40, or we can go and spend $15 on some really good stuff at the grocery store and make a wonderful meal. And so, the value proposition there is it worth an extra $15 or $25 to go out and avoid that effort of making your own meal, and the hassles that come along with going out to eat. And the same for cars and houses. I mean, we spend what we need to make sure things are maintained reasonably well. And it's so many of the budget categories are somewhat unpredictable at the individual category level. I mean, I never know if I'm going to have a major car repair this year or next year, but I know over time I'm going to have to replace lots of stuff. The same thing with the house. I mean, we're battling some flooding right now underneath our house in the crawl space, and it's and part of it is do it yourself. I mean, we can take care of some things ourselves without paying a maintenance person to come in or a plumber. Some things I can't handle, but there's always unpredictability in terms of timing of when things are going to mess up. But I think overall, the entire budget, bad stuff doesn't happen in every category every year. So there is some consistency when you aggregate all the expenses. And that's why I don't really worry too much about individual categories of expenses. And health's another one. I mean, you can't control if you slip and fall and get hurt. It's going to cost money. But that doesn't happen every year. It's kind of random. So it's sort of like diversifying our spending and accepting that some years, some categories will be higher than other categories, and then it may flip the next year. But I think, I don't know, I guess we just naturally are able to spend a low enough amount that we didn't really have to budget in order to save a lot of money. And part of that was reasonably high incomes. I mean, it's probably double the median income in the U.S., what we ended up making when we started out.
Were you saying, was it 130,000 you were saying was combined, or what was very roughly?
The salary, I think we topped out at 141,000, and then there was another 9,000 or so of investment income. That's how that $150,000 per year figure, that includes our investment income from dividends, that sort of thing. So,
but and that was the combined, you and your wife working full time. Is that right?
Yeah, that's combined, and it's salaries are so subjective, because to me that doesn't seem like a lot, because I was surrounded by people that made way more than that, and my wife at the investment bank. I mean, there's people that make 10 times that much from bonuses. The floor traders, and I mean, they're making 10 times their bonuses. Their 1 month salary is probably what we make in a whole year. And so it's all relative. But then you talk to someone who makes $40,000 per year, and they're like, well, of course I could retire in 10 years if I made what you made. But that was the salary figure.
Yeah, well, and interestingly enough, there are people who are retiring on sort of combined couples 50, 60,000 years. It's just that they have to be that bit more super frugal, I guess. It's feasible too.
And that's if that's your goal, and you're earning 50 to 60,000 per year combined, a budget may make sense. I mean, I guess the ratio of our income to what we want to spend is high enough to the point where if we budgeted, we might be able to trim off a few $1,000s a year in spending, but we already try to maximize our utility of what we spend money on, and so I think we would probably start feeling the pain of trying to cut spending if we budgeted and really said, okay, it's beans and rice for the rest of the month because we spent our money and we just have to live off of our beans and rice, and I think we would end up just going out to eat and just. For me, all the categories are the same pot of money. It's our money. I mean, I get more value out of spreading out the consumption over the whole month than having everything be awesome for the first 10 days and then try to pinch pennies the next 10 days and then suffer through the last 10 days of not having money. But
and I think also there is a kind of choice to be made between. If you want financial independence, you've got to do two things. You have to generate wealth and you have to save it. And the third thing, I guess, is you have to be able to invest it sensibly. But in speaking to people who do this, it also seems to me that there are people who naturally prefer to focus a bit more on generating wealth, and other people who prefer to focus a bit more on saving. And so, for example, it makes sense to me that you both had relatively good, well-paying jobs, or good, well-paying jobs, and you did that. So you obviously you obviously had good careers and focused on that. And you've got a more relaxed approach to budgeting. Whereas, as you mentioned, if somebody who is not making as much in terms of generating wealth, they're going to have to really put more effort and more like real attention into the saving side and really count every penny. I was much more similar to you in the sense that, I sort of feel like I should have budgeted a lot better than I have done always, because budgeting always seems to be one of those things that's really sensible. And I do have a budget and I do track my spending, but I don't track it nearly as carefully as some people that I've seen online do. But I focused on building a business and selling it. And so it was more on the income generation side. And I think as long as one has a good balance that, you do generate some wealth and you do manage to save enough, then it's a matter of choice as well, where you prefer to sort of see your strengths, if you like.
Yeah, I think so. And as you're saying that, I feel like I was kind of picky or maybe lazy in terms of my career, just because I didn't want to work really, really hard. I wanted to have plenty of free time during the working career. But I think I was also smart in the sense that I focused on, look, this is my employer. We have a business relationship. They pay me money in exchange for me doing awesome things for them. And so I focused on making sure I was compensated appropriately. And when it was time to go somewhere else and get rewarded, then, I made that choice. So I mean, I did put in on the big picture things, I put in effort, but in terms of day to day, I mean, I always wanted that, 40-hour or maybe a little bit more per week job, and didn't want to have a long commute or lots of travel. So I think in that case, I mean, my income probably suffered because of it, but just that extra little bit of money that I could have made probably wouldn't have made a lot of difference in terms of happiness long term. And then I actually put more effort, I'd say, into saving money, not budgeting, but just economizing where I could, and researching purchases and that sort of thing.
Right.
So I probably walked a middle ground between those two. But yeah, if your income is constrained, because some professions just simply there aren't opportunities to make a ton of money. I mean, here, social workers, teachers, in my state, they, a pair of teachers, they could make $70,000 or $80,000, and that may be all they can ever make in a year as a household. And they get pensions, and so that may be the strategy of just working until you get your pension, and you can still save money on $70,000 or $80,000 a year. People do it. So, and
you remember your wife you mentioned your wife works in financial services, and you were in engineering. Is that right?
Yeah. I worked in civil engineering and finished out my career working for a toll road agency.
Right. And what's interesting is that it is possible. I talk quite a lot about entrepreneurship on my podcast, but you went the route of paid employment the whole time, and you made it work to get to financial independence. And it seems to me the key things, as you say, was the saving, and also, definitely the saving is number one, and also using all the tax-deferred accounts and just maxing out your opportunities that way. Because obviously with entrepreneurship, there's other ways of saving money on tax. But I guess if you really just are very diligent about making use of every opportunity that you can, then there are huge opportunities for reducing your tax bill as an employee as well.
Yeah. And just to touch on entrepreneurship too, we started a business. I was still in college, and I started a business doing some engineering data collection, and it made a little bit of money here and there. But then one month we were just incredibly busy, and we made about $30,000 in 1 month. So it was that's getting back to the house purchase. That's where the bulk of the cash to buy our house came from. Was this business that we had during college, and we had probably 12 or 13 almost full-time employees at one point. They were all temporary employees, but so we did have our little venture with entrepreneurship, but it was hard work. I mean, it was 16-hour days, 17-hour days, lots of responsibility. But it paid off well. I mean, it was immensely profitable for a month or two of hard work. So I had my taste of it, and I said I could do entrepreneurship, probably make more money, but it'd be more stress, more risk, and more work. Which I don't know if that was necessarily true, but that's at least what I felt from my own experience with it. And I just looked at the odds, and I played the odds of, hey, I can go get a job, get paid reasonably well, and get good benefits, and it won't have to work really hard or take on a lot of risk, because if the company fails that I work for, I can change employers. But if my own company that I build fails, my wealth will disappear with it.
Right. Yeah. Well, it certainly is pretty tough in the beginning for everyone that I've spoken to about it. So yeah, I think you had a realistic picture there. So, Justin, I want to have the chance to quickly touch on investment, because that's another sort of key practical question. And I understand that your approach is sort of influenced by the passive investing, low cost index funding approach. Is that right? Is that a fair summary of your general approach to investing?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. Yes.
Right. And I'm always interested in this, because this seems to be a very common approach for people who are doing the kind of extreme saving, intensive saving route. And a question I've asked other people who follow this route, I personally follow another passive investing approach, but I take the approach called the permanent portfolio. which is
Yeah.
that you've heard of that one.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact 4 allocations, but I've heard. I think it's gold, long treasuries, stocks, and short treasuries.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And
there you go. I can't tell you.
Yeah, there you go. And so I just wanted to ask you, because one of the issues with investing in principally in stocks is in the long term, stocks do perform generally better. But there are decades like the 70s and the 2000s when there are long periods where if you're fully into just one asset class like that, it can be tough going for a while. And other people I've spoken to have taken the approach that they're willing to live with that level of volatility because basically they're just planning super long term, so they kind of don't mind if there's a long period of hard going where your assets are not necessarily even keeping up with inflation, because ultimately you're going to get those boom years in stocks which are going to make up for it. Now, is that your thoughts on it too, or what's your thoughts about being heavily into stocks?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm thinking long term, like decades and decades and decades, hopefully. And so especially right now, I mean, I guess I'm kind of timing the market right now just because the bond yields are so low right now. Especially on the short side, I can get better yields from a stock portfolio than I could from low interest credit rate, low credit risk bonds. So part of the strategy is just focusing on those areas that will give the best long-term return on average, while acknowledging that, there could be a 10-year period where it's really tough going. I'm just about 100% stocks right now. And I've been letting my cash build up. I've been collecting all the dividends and sticking them in cash right now. And so we have a little bit over a year's worth of expenses saved up in cash. So if the stock market crashed tomorrow,
you go on a buying spree.
Yeah, we can go buy some, or just sit back and spend down our little bit over a year's worth of cash, and not worry too much about it. And
right.
And so that's, I think I might be more comfortable with 2 or 3 years of cash right now. Part of what's influencing that right now is my wife is still working, and so we can live perfectly well and then some off of just her paycheck because our expenses are low enough. But I think once she quits working, I may shift maybe more like 10% into cash or short-term fixed rate notes, treasuries or CDs, or something that's very, very low risk. And a 10% allocation to that would give us 3 or 4 years of expenses, and the dividend yields we're getting are almost enough to pay for our living expenses as well. So part of it is the dividends are high enough now that they almost fund our living expenses, and accepting that there's some risk that I may have to pick up some part-time work at some point, or focus more on freelancing, or work on my blog more and try to monetize it better. That's certainly a plan B or a plan C for us, is try to find a little bit of supplemental income if the portfolio won't keep up.
Well, that's an interesting one, because I wanted to actually ask you another question that I had is, what do you want to do now that I think is it just over a year that you've been retired? I can't remember from your blog what you said.
It's almost a year, about 11 months right now.
Right. So, and obviously you and your wife are looking at when maybe in the future that would be the best time and what the benefits are for her job. And so at some point you guys are going to both be early retired, whenever that works best for you. What do you want to do? What's the sort of plans that you've got for the future?
Yeah, I guess I've sort of realized after I retired that the next few years is going to be pretty family childcare intensive. We have a 2-year-old, so for a few more years he is going to keep me very busy. So I go out with him and do play dates and story time at the library, and take him out and to the park, that sort of thing. So that keeps me sort of busy during the day. But I also, and I know that in a few years when he's in school, it's going to change where I have 6 or 8 hour blocks every day where I'm free, you know.
Yeah.
But right now, I mean, I've spent a lot of time. Let's see the different things I do. Reading. I like to read fiction and nonfiction. Some history, some economic, finance, history related stuff. Watch a lot of documentaries.
I watched a lot of documentaries when I first retired as well.
Yeah, and it's, you know, you have time to dig into things. And another thing I've picked up is Coursera. It's I think the abbreviation is MMOC for these massively or MOOC, massive online colleges or something like that. Anyway, there's just these online colleges you can do now that are free, and MIT I think has some free classes you can take. But I've been going through Coursera and signed up for a few classes on things that interest me. One of them was financial markets with Robert Shiller, Nobel Prize winning economist here. And it's taught, you know, he's a professor at Yale University. It's a top flight, top tier school. And I'm watching the same instruction that kids that are going to Yale are getting. I mean, but it's free for me. Yeah, and I can watch it. I would sit out on my back deck in my hammock on Sunday afternoons and watch the lectures and do the quizzes. And, you know, it's something that interests me. And I've signed up for a few courses on origins of life and evolution, and a course on online cryptography, and so I just have a lot of like sciencey computer science, programming, biology, finance, just history, just a lot of different interests that I've always spent time learning more about them and reading and engaging in these different subjects. But now I can just do a lot more of it, and I can commit time to diving into, you know, committing to an 8-week course and watching a couple hours of lectures per week and doing supplemental reading and answering quizzes. And I've been doing some online language learning. So far, only French, which helped out on our trip to Canada. But just doing different things like that, different learning opportunities. I spent more time. You know, I have plenty of time now to fix things around the house. So it's you know, it's because it's challenging. It's interesting to figure out how systems work, what's wrong with them, and how to fix them. And it saves us money, but it's also I know how to, once I know how to do it, I can repeat the process again and fix something else. And part of it's having a nice house to live in that's comfortable, that we enjoy spending time in. So
I think that's all awesome, and I can see that there's like a virtuous circle there. The more you learn about how to fix stuff, the more stuff gets fixed around the house, the better the house is, and so forth. And the most important thing, I think, is also just for people, I think it's really inspirational to hear about, as I said before, about the time that you get to spend with your kids, because so many people, you know, that have kids and then barely see them because they're just, as you said, just so exhausted when they come home from work, and that time's never coming back. So I think it's really, really great that you get to enjoy the opportunity now while you have the chance.
Yeah, and that was part of, you know, I made some sacrifices in my career just by focusing on that 40-hour per week job that did not have a long commute and not a lot of travel. I mean, I had no problem taking time off to take a day off and go to the school with the kids and help out, volunteer for things, go on field trips with them, and so that was even while I was working. I mean, the focus wasn't always on making as much money as possible, because I could have chosen some careers in consulting that would have meant a lot more hours, a lot more time on the road, a lot more stress, and a lot more evening and weekend time working and spending time on the phone. But all along it's been sort of crafting that lifestyle, whether it's while I was working or now, doing what you want to do, not doing what you want to do because you choose it, not just because you're like, okay, well, everyone else works really hard, so I'm going to climb to the top just like them and vie for that spot at the very, very top. I think it's a lot easier to walk that middle path of trying to be above average instead of the absolute best. Right,
absolutely. Well, I wanted to just finish by, it's been such a pleasure hearing about your journey, and I wanted to finish just for my listeners who who have really, many of whom will be hearing about this whole concept of financial independence for the first time or early on in hearing about it. And also who will have heard from many people that it's just impossible in this day and age with all of the cost of living that we have and inflation to worry about and everything else. And it's kind of, foolish to even imagine that one can pursue that unless you have some kind of immense inheritance or something like that. I think it's really inspirational to hear your story. And I wonder if you have any advice for anyone who's being introduced to these ideas and who is inspired by it and wants to pursue something similar to what you did.
I think the best thing to do is figure out what you think you might want to do with your life. If you think about it in big picture level, the human lifespan is maybe 80 years. You can break it up into 4 20-year chunks. First 20 years you spend going to school, getting an education, getting to the point where you can make a high enough income to live well enough and save a lot of money. The next 20 years, that's probably going to be working, or a large part of it will be working, making money. And then the last 2 sets of 20 years, hopefully by then you can set yourself up to the point where you can work as much as you want to or as little as you want to, and enjoy your life while you're healthy enough to be able to do it, and while you're while you still have some vigor left in you. But you don't get there by accident. You have to think about and plan where do you want to be 10 years out or 20 years out, and make decisions today when you have a chance to influence the future. Because a lot of it is just, it takes time, many, many years to set yourself up to be in a position where you want to be. So really the biggest advice I think is think about the next few years, but really get the big picture of where do you want to be in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, and what kind of a lifestyle do you want to have then, and try to work towards that goal and set yourself up, even though it may take a few years of hard work to start out, to get yourself in that position to reach that goal. Over time, you just keep working toward it. And that's pretty much the big picture advice that I'd give out. That's
great. Where can people find you, Justin, if they want to find out more about you and learn more about your own experiences?
Well, the website is my blog is rootofgood.com. I'm on Facebook, and you can find that from the blog. And my Twitter handle is rootofgoodblog. So you can find me there. I'm on Google Plus somewhere. But the blog is the best place. You can sign up there for email subscriptions, and there's a contact form if you want to contact me. Jump on there and shoot me an email. I'll get back to you, I promise. And follow on Facebook or Twitter. But that's pretty much it. And I've met with a few people locally that have started reading the blog, and I've talked to them about, it's great talking to a 23, 24-year-old about these grand life plans they have. And I'm like, yeah, you can actually do this. You can achieve this. And in 10 years, you may be where I'm at, able to do whatever you want to do, really. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Justin.
All right. Thanks so much, Jake.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you have feedback about the show, please email jake@thevoluntarylife.com. If you enjoyed this program, please share the podcast with your friends or click the donate button on thevoluntarylife.com.